Why smart people believe the most outrageous lies. One of the most fascinating things about human beings is that intelligence, this thing we often celebrate, pursue, and admire, can sometimes lead people to believe the most outrageous, ridiculous lies. It seems counterintuitive, right? We tend to assume that the smarter someone is, the more immune they are to deception. But in reality, it's often the reverse. So why do smart people, who have all the tools to see through falsehoods, sometimes fall for the most unbelievable lies? Let's start by considering intelligence itself. Intelligence is like a tool, a powerful, versatile tool. But as with any tool, the way you use it matters more than the tool itself. A hammer can build a house, but it can also destroy one. Similarly, intelligence can uncover deep truths, but it can also create elaborate justifications for falsehoods. The problem arises when people begin to use their intelligence not as a way to seek truth, but as a way to defend beliefs they are already emotionally or ideologically attached to. And this is where things get tricky. We like to think that intelligence is purely rational, that it's always leading us toward truth. But the reality is that intelligence is often blended with emotion, bias, and ego. Smart people, in particular, can be very good at rationalizing their beliefs, whether those beliefs are true or not. They can construct intricate arguments to defend ideas that, on the surface, might seem absurd. And the more intelligent someone is, the better they are at doing this. They can twist facts, manipulate data, and create logical-sounding reasons to justify even the most outrageous lies. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, how often do I use my intelligence to genuinely seek truth? And how often do I use it to protect my beliefs or my ego? Here's another layer to this intellectual overconfidence. The more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to trust your own judgment. You start to believe that you're too smart to be fooled. You might think, I'm intelligent, I've done my research, I can't possibly be wrong about this. But this overconfidence can make you blind to new evidence or alternative perspectives. You become so convinced of your own intellectual superiority that you stop questioning yourself. And once you stop questioning yourself, you become vulnerable to believing things that aren't true. At the same time, smart people are often drawn to complexity. They enjoy ideas that challenge the status quo, that stretch the boundaries of conventional thinking. And this can be a good thing. It's how breakthroughs in science, philosophy, and art happen. But it can also make them susceptible to believing overly complex or convoluted theories that sound impressive but have little basis in reality. After all, if something is complicated and difficult to understand, it must be true, right? Wrong. Wrong.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Let me ask you this, have you ever been drawn to an idea simply because it was difficult to understand? Because it made you feel like you were part of an intellectual elite? Now, let's talk about social dynamics. Smart people often move in circles where certain beliefs are taken as self-evident. They are surrounded by other intelligent people who share those beliefs, and this creates a kind of echo chamber. In these environments, it becomes difficult to question the prevailing narrative, even if that narrative is based on a lie. The fear of being ostracized or ridiculed for questioning the group's beliefs can be powerful, even for the most independent thinkers. And yet, this is where the real philosophical dilemma comes in. How do we know when we're being deceived by a lie? How do we differentiate between a belief that is genuinely rooted in truth and one that is simply a product of our intelligence working against us, blinding us to reality? Now, imagine you're in a situation where everyone around you believes something that you find questionable. Do you have the courage to stand up and say, maybe we're wrong? Or do you fall in line, using your intelligence to justify the lie because it's easier than confronting the truth? The trap of confirmation bias, why we see only what we want to believe now. Let's dive deeper into one of the most insidious forces at play when smart people fall for outrageous lies: confirmation bias. You've probably heard this term before. It's the tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. But here's the thing: the smarter you are, the better you are at engaging with confirmation bias. You have more intellectual resources to selectively filter information, to bend reality to fit your worldview. Think about it like this: if you're good at building arguments, you will naturally be better at constructing narratives that support your beliefs, whether those beliefs are true or not. You'll cherry-pick data, find patterns where none exist, and dismiss counter-arguments as irrelevant or flawed. This is especially common with people who have a high level of expertise in a particular field. They're so used to being right that they assume their judgment is infallible. But in reality, expertise doesn't make you immune to bias, it often reinforces it. Ask yourself, when was the last time I actively sought out information that contradicted what I believe? When was the last time I genuinely listened to an opposing viewpoint, not just to refute it, but to understand it? The truth is, we're all guilty of confirmation bias to some extent. But for intelligent people, it can become a dangerous trap, because they are more adept at generating sophisticated justifications for their beliefs. They can dig themselves deeper into the hole of self-deception. And here's the kicker: the smarter you are, the less likely you are to realize you're doing it. You become convinced that your beliefs are rational, that you've arrived at them through careful thought and reason, when in fact, you've simply been reinforcing what you already wanted to believe. This is particularly problematic in the age of the internet. With so much information at our fingertips, it's easier than ever to find sources that confirm whatever we want to believe, no matter how outrageous. Algorithms on social media platforms feed us content that aligns with our interests and beliefs, creating an echo chamber where we're constantly surrounded by information that supports our existing views. The more we engage with this content, the more entrenched our beliefs become. Now, let's bring this back to the topic of lies. Why do smart people believe the most outrageous lies? Because they're able to convince themselves that the lie fits into a broader, coherent narrative. They can weave together pieces of information, no matter how disconnected or contradictory, into a story that makes sense to them. And once that story is in place, it becomes incredibly hard to let go of it. The human mind craves coherence and consistency, and once we've constructed a narrative that ties everything together, we become emotionally invested in it. Here's a question for you: how much of what you believe is based on a coherent narrative that you've constructed, and how much of it is based on actual, objective reality? The irony here is that intelligence, when used properly, should help us break free from these cognitive traps. It should lead us to question our assumptions, to seek out opposing viewpoints, and to challenge the narratives that we've built. But too often, intelligence is misused as a tool for self-deception. Instead of guiding us toward truth, it reinforces the lies we tell ourselves. Let's not forget the role of ego in all of this. For many intelligent people, their self-worth is tied to being right. Admitting that they've been fooled by a lie can feel like a personal failure, a blow to their intellectual identity. So they double down on their beliefs, even when presented with overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It's easier to rationalize the lie than to admit they were wrong. This is why you often see highly intelligent people clinging to conspiracy theories or pseudoscience. They've invested so much of their identity in these beliefs that letting go of them would mean admitting they've been deceived. Now, consider this: how much of your identity is tied to being right? Could you let go of a deeply held belief if you found out it was false, or would your ego get in the way? The seductive power of groupthink, why intelligence fails in numbers. Let's now explore another crucial factor: groupthink. Even the smartest individuals can fall prey to the influence of a collective, where the pressure to conform overrides independent judgment. And this is something we see time and time again. Intelligent people, people who are capable of critical thinking, get swept up in the momentum of group beliefs. When you're surrounded by others who share the same views, it's easy to start doubting your own instincts and go along with the crowd, even if the belief in question is completely irrational. Here's where it gets interesting. Smart people are particularly vulnerable to groupthink, not because they lack critical thinking skills, but because they often trust their intellectual peers. In a group of highly intelligent individuals, there's an unspoken assumption that if everyone believes something, it must be true. After all, how could so many smart people be wrong? But this is a dangerous assumption. Intelligence doesn't make us immune to herd mentality, it just gives us more sophisticated ways of justifying it. Think about it. Have you ever been in a group where everyone held the same belief, and you felt a subtle, almost imperceptible pressure to agree, even if you silently doubted it? And if you did speak up, how quickly did you start questioning your own objections when faced with collective disapproval? The power of groupthink lies in its ability to make us feel safe and validated. When we align ourselves with the beliefs of those around us, we feel a sense of belonging. This is why even the most outlandish ideas can take hold in a group setting. Once a lie gains traction within a group, it becomes self-reinforcing. People stop questioning it, not because they're incapable of critical thought, but because the social cost of dissent is too high. It's easier to go along with the lie than to risk alienation or ridicule. Here's a deep question for you. How often do you accept a belief simply because it's shared by the people you respect or admire? Are you willing to challenge the consensus, even if it means standing alone? In these situations, intelligence can actually work against us. Smart people are often highly attuned to social dynamics. They understand the nuances of communication, the subtle cues of approval and disapproval. And this awareness can make them more likely to conform, as they rationalize their agreement as a sign of open-mindedness or intellectual humility, but in reality, they're just avoiding the discomfort of standing out. What's more, the smarter you are, the better you are at convincing yourself that the group's belief is right, even if deep down you have doubts. You might start telling yourself, if everyone here believes this, there must be something I'm missing. Instead of questioning the belief, you start questioning your own judgment. Now, ask yourself, when was the last time you doubted your own reasoning simply because it went against the majority opinion? The tragedy of groupthink is that it stifles the very thing that intelligence should thrive on: independent thought. In a culture that values consensus, it takes real courage to stand apart and say, "No, I don't agree." But this is also where true wisdom lies: the ability to question not only your own beliefs, but the beliefs of the collective, even when it feels uncomfortable. The courage to embrace uncertainty, breaking free from the comfort of lies. As we reach the final part of this exploration, let's address a fundamental truth: smart people often believe outrageous lies because, like everyone else, they seek comfort in certainty. Intelligence, by its very nature, thrives on finding patterns, solving problems, and creating order out of chaos. But life, real, messy, unpredictable life, is full of uncertainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. No matter how intelligent you are, the human mind craves stability, coherence, and answers. When faced with ambiguity, we have a natural tendency to latch onto explanations that provide us with a sense of control, even if those explanations are false. This desire for certainty is what makes outrageous lies so appealing. Lies, especially the most seductive ones, offer simple answers to complex problems. They provide a sense of clarity in a world that is often confusing and overwhelming. And for intelligent people, the allure of creating a cohesive narrative out of fragmented truths can be irresistible. The more outrageous the lie, the more it promises to explain the unexplainable, to make sense of the nonsensical. But here's the paradox: truly intelligent people must learn to embrace uncertainty, not run from it. The pursuit of truth is not about finding definitive answers to every question. It's about recognizing that some things simply cannot be known with absolute certainty. Wisdom comes not from having all the answers, but from being comfortable with the fact that some answers may never be found. So, ask yourself, how often do I cling to a belief simply because it offers me comfort, even if deep down I know it might not be true? Am I willing to live in the discomfort of not knowing, of accepting that some things may remain unresolved? Breaking free from the comfort of lies requires intellectual humility. It means acknowledging that no matter how smart you are, you're not immune to deception. It means recognizing that your intelligence can sometimes work against you, leading you to craft elaborate justifications for things that simply aren't true. And most importantly, it means being willing to question even your most deeply held beliefs, not just once, but continually. Here's a challenge: the next time you find yourself absolutely certain about something, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? This simple question is an act of intellectual bravery. It forces you to step outside the comfort of your own mind, to consider alternative perspectives, and to embrace the possibility of uncertainty. In the end, the real test of intelligence is not how well you can defend your beliefs, but how willing you are to change them in the face of new evidence. The smartest people are those who remain open to the idea that they could be wrong, who are constantly questioning their own assumptions, and who are willing to live in the gray areas of life, where certainty is elusive and truth is often complex. So, I leave you with this final thought: intelligence is a double-edged sword. It can lead you to great truths, or it can trap you in elaborate lies. The difference lies not in how much you know, but in how willing you are to question what you think you know. Are you brave enough to let go of the lies that bring you comfort and embrace the uncertainty that leads to truth? Thank you for joining me on this journey.